things in the way I was living and the way I was managing my normal work life. And it was an opportunity to rethink things. And I think changing times, crises, they're always both a challenge and an opportunity, aren't they? If you look at every disaster that's happened, some people have always come out strong from it. There are always winners and there are losers. And how do we choose which we're going to be? So I guess the premise that we're working on is that everything has changed. So we're told the whole world is different and never going to be the same again. And recession is round the corner if it's not already here. Unemployment looming. But does that mean to say we have to suffer for it? Does it mean to say things are going to be difficult? What happens if we change? And it makes me realize that one of the mantras of any kind of business coach is that everything in your business is in your control. You can change pretty much any of the parameters of your business, but often we don't. We feel like we're constrained by other people's pricing or the economy and so on. In actual fact, everything is in our control. And one of the things I think about COVID-19 is it gives us the absolute perfect excuse for changing anything. If you don't like your current career, it's a great excuse for saying, well, that wasn't working, I'll do something different. If you don't like the customers you deal with, maybe now's the time to go and find a different set of customers. No one is ever going to turn around and say, oh, well, you shouldn't have changed. Things were going so well. It's the perfect opportunity to change. But how do you do that? How do you know where to go and how to change that and what direction to go in? So that was the question I faced from my point of view. And that's the question I think a lot of us face is, how do we make those changes? How do I turn this real negative story, the gloom of recession, I hear what you're saying, Eva, about the tourism industry. We have a little bed and breakfast here and resource consent to build a whole lot more. And, how do we change all of that stuff? And how do you come up with the ideas to do that? So the process I went through in terms of putting this together is very similar to the way I work with all of our clients, which is to say, you really need to start thinking about the business from the outside in. So my agenda for today, 4 things. I want to talk about cash flow very briefly, and I'll explain why in a minute. And then the standard sort of planning for any kind of direction. Where are you now? Where are you going? And how do you get there? So let's just talk briefly about cash flow. And John Hopkins is on the call. He's my other partner in the same business here in the Nelson region. John is always really, really good at focusing on the basics and getting to grips with the kind of nitty gritty of business on a daily basis. And, cash flow is king. Why is cash flow king? Because if you haven't got any money, you really can't do anything. If you've got money in the bank, you can change all kinds of things. So right now, the kind of first thing I would say to anybody that I start talking to is to say, reserve your cash. People who come out of recession well are people who had money in the bank and they were able to invest it in new things when they saw the opportunities. If you're up to the hills with debt already, it's going to be really hard to make that change because there's little flexibility to invest in new stuff. And whatever you change is going to take time to become a reality. It won't happen overnight. So we need to have the time to make that flexible change and make it happen. So the cash in the bank's a power of strength. At the end of the day, if you were thinking of doing investment, I would stop and rethink about where you're going, focus on the future, and then choose that investment afterwards. And if, as a lot of people I've dealt with in the last few, and John will attest this as well, we've had a lot of people talking to us saying, well, what I don't understand is there's profit in the business, but there's no money in the bank. Or how come the inland revenue are always asking me for more, but I never have the money to pay them? If you're struggling with that question, that's a great conversation over a coffee. Either John or I could sit down with you for an hour or two and just explain how the difference between what the accountant sees and profit and loss, what the inland revenue sees, and what's actually going on in the bank, and why they're 2 different things. But that's not today's topic. So cash is king. You can't invest what you don't have. And if you're going to make changes, you're going to have to invest. You can invest time, you can invest creative energy, but you typically need money to be able to cover yourself through the gap. And the great thing is, if you've got a downturn in business, you just have another opportunity to apply for a wage subsidy. That at least will help to cover you through the next couple of months. So again, now is a really good time to start making changes because the government's paying for them, or some of them. Okay, where do we start? If you wanted to reinvent your business, where do you start? There's an old joke my dad used to tell me of a man walking through the town asking directions to the train station. So he stopped an old lady walking on the footpath and said, "Excuse me, could you tell me how to get to the train station?" And her answer is, "Well, I wouldn't start from here." It's not really helpful, but we often feel like that. You want to make changes and you look at the current situation and say, but I'm in the wrong place to make those changes. And I think the trouble is that if we want to go forward, if we want to reinvent the future, we actually have to be very cognizant of where we're starting from, We have to know where we are in order to be able to make that decision. So the first thing we need to start at is we need to face up to the reality of the present. We need to be aware of what are the good things of today and what are the bad things today. We really need to know where we're at today. And then we can visualize the future and make sure it's a future that we believe in, that we're passionate about. And once you've done that, it's not too hard to put a plan together to go from A to B. Just like any journey, if you know where you're starting from, you can navigate to your destination. If you either don't know where you are, it's really hard to read the map and work out where you're going. And if you haven't got a destination, you could end up anywhere, but you won't necessarily be satisfied with where you've got to. So we need 3 stages: face the reality, visualize the future, and put a plan in place. Okay? How do you face the reality? Well, this is a standard tool that's been used by businesses for ages to work out where are we at today. What are the strengths and weaknesses that we have in the business? What are the opportunities and threats externally? And I know it's kind of old hat and we've been doing it for a long time, but it's actually a really powerful tool. What I find when I go through my clients with this process, people are pretty good at finding their strengths. They often see their strengths, though, in the terms of the present day reality. So we're really good at serving customers who walk in through the front door. We have a fantastic customer service. But what happens if those customers change? What happens if those customers, instead of walking through the front door, came on a wheelchair? Would you still be good at looking after them? You know, our strengths tend to be described in terms of today's business. If we want to reinvent the business, we kind of need to look a bit bigger than that. We need to look outside of the current description of what we do and say, so, you know, maybe our strength is being friendly. Maybe our strength is being able to be quick to understand the problem, not just this problem, but any problem. Maybe our strengths are in terms of techniques or tools that we have, technologies we really understand. And if you can list those strengths as part of this, you want to list them in non-industry specific terms. So they're generic strengths that you could then apply to lots of different problems. Because at the end of the day, as business people, we solve problems for people. And if we know what we're good at, we could solve many problems with those skills and those strengths. So the strengths is fairly easy to do. The threats is not too hard to do either. They're fairly easily spotted. They tend to be threats are always external to your business. So for example, the government putting up the minimum wage could be a major threat to a hospitality business. The current economic recession that everyone's forecasting is a threat because people are not confident, so they don't want to invest much money. So threats are external things you really have almost no control over, but you can plan for. You can prepare things for to make sure that, you know, for example, if you're exposed to foreign currency, you can actually invest in hedging the foreign currency, so you know you've got that protected. So threats are not too hard to spot. When you're looking at threats, it's also worth looking at your competitors and what they're doing, because they represent fairly real threats to you, and actually understanding what's going on in the competitive space can be a good way of looking at the threats your business will face in the future. The 2 hardest ones to look at, opportunities and weaknesses. Weaknesses are hard because most people don't like to look at what's broken. Most people are positive, you know, we can do it, we'll get there, she'll be right, kind of typical attitude. And the last thing I want you to do is to tell me that I suck at my inventory management system, you know. As a consultant, that's the hardest part of any conversation, is sitting down with someone and saying, actually, you know, your marketing's broken. I hate to tell you this, but you're not getting anybody coming through your website. It just doesn't work for you, does it? You really need to fix that. Or maybe the way you present your product, you know, you've got this fantastic top quality product and you're discounting it to try and compete with the chains. There's something broken here. People don't like that kind of story, and it's hard for us to look at it. But if we're going to do anything useful with our businesses, we have to be honest. We have to absolutely brutally honest about what are the weaknesses in our business, because only when you see them and write them down can you realize that they're not as scary as you thought, and you can fix them. If you don't write them down, if you don't face them, they'll never get fixed and they'll carry on. So face the weaknesses, it's really important. Opportunities are interesting because the thing about opportunities is it's really hard. You've been, you know, especially if you've been in business for a long time, you see that, you know, this is the way the business has always worked. So how am I supposed to recognize the opportunities? How do I look outside what I do today to see new things happening? Or maybe I've got a client who's an engineer. He's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And when we sit down and talk about opportunities, he immediately picks out this, well, I built one of these once. I think I could sell hundreds of those. And I built one of those over here once, and we could, you know, there's just thousands of opportunities. How do you focus? How do you know where to target your work in order to be able to invest in things that are actually going to generate results for the business. So I have a little model I use for the opportunity side of things in terms of where to look for opportunities. And the example I'm going to give is a company, a mythical company I've made up, and they work in the kiwi fruit picking sector. They make kiwi fruit picking equipment, or maybe they import it, I don't know. And if you're in that business and you're looking at it and you say, well, that's struggling, where do I go next? Where's the first thing you'd look? And if this was a live conversation, I'd be asking you, where's the first thing you look? But since I can't do that so easily online, we'll just skip through that question. In my mind, the two things you're going to look at first is what happens before the bit that you're dealing with. So before we pick kiwi fruit, we have to plant the trees, we have to prune the trees, we fertilize, there's a whole spraying, there's a whole set of industries, if you like, or service providers before my stage in the supply chain. So is there stuff that I can do, taking my skills, my strengths, and applying them earlier in the supply chain of the industry I'm in? What about later? The packing, shipping, processing of the kiwi fruit. If I know enough about kiwi fruit handling in the picking place, I probably have the skills and the experience to do stuff in the next stages as well. So that's the first place I'd look. Look up and down the supply chain that you currently serve. And then the next thing I'd look at parallel. So if you can do kiwi fruits, you might be able to do hops and the same vertical supply chain. And if you could do hops, you could probably do apples or grapes. These are all parallel industries, if you like. They have a similar kind of business model, but they're not the same as kiwi fruit. Maybe you're running an ice cream parlor. Well, parallel to that would be a hot dog stand. They're not the same business, but they're similar kind of businesses. They use similar kind of skills and equipment. So it wouldn't be harm to take what you know of the business you're already in and apply them in those kind of parallel industries. So looking for opportunities, to my mind, you look two directions. You look up and down the supply chain you're in, and you look across to similar parallel industries. And those are the easiest ways to take what you know and are good at and apply them in different ways. Sergey's on this call. He's a computer guy. And when I started my last business, which was in the IT space, we focused on voice, phone systems. It wasn't hard to move away from phone systems, if you like, into that network, into IT networks and then into desktop support. They're kind of parallel verticals in the same overall industry. So that's just an example of how to take what you're good at and apply it into other things, to look for opportunities and see how you can apply them. Sometimes it's hard to look beyond today, and that's where having other people in the mix is really helpful. Talk to your staff, talk to colleagues in the industry, ask them questions about what they do. And in my mind, the easiest way to look for opportunities is to leverage the relationships you have. So maybe you have a really good customer in the kiwi fruit picking equipment business, who you've worked with for a long time. So go along and have a chat with them and say, do you know somebody who does what you do, but in the hops industry? Who can I talk to who knows about packing, shipping, and processing kiwi fruit? Because I might be able to help solve some problems in that space. You're looking for relationships, and then spend some time talking to those customers, basically. And the question is very simple. What are the problems you face? What doesn't work for you in your industry? And then how can I use the skills and strengths I have to solve those problems? Relationships is the key here, isn't it? It's actually spending time with people. I like Seth Godin's book about what is marketing, and his comment is marketing is not about selling stuff. It's not about advertising. It's about finding customers' problems and working out how you can solve them as a business, how you can apply your strengths to solving them, and then describing that so the customer understands it. And I think when you look at your current situation, this space is looking at outside of your business. Where do I go next? Where could I go next? What are the opportunities out there? Okay. The other thing I look at in the opportunities, and I noticed Sergey commenting in the chat there, I went prepaid during lockdown and raised my rates. Big picture trends are a really good way of looking at it. For example, turning a service into an outcomes-based service. So in the IT industry, in Sergey and my background, IT used to be time and materials. You charge for every hour you work. The problem with charging for every hour you work is there's only so many hours in a day. And people are always expecting you to discount or to do it quicker. But if instead of charging for fixing your computer, I charged for keeping your computer working, I've turned a break-fix service, charging by the hour, into an outcome service, which is I will make sure that your technology always works for you. Now, the value I deliver there is always working technology. The price we agree on is not going to depend on how long it takes me to do that. So I can not only typically charge a premium for that, but I can also use investment in technology to make me more efficient to do it so that my costs go down and therefore my margin goes up. Another example might be if you charge by the hour for cleaning somebody's house, turning that into an agreement to keep the house clean and then investing in better cleaning technology to do it faster. If you charge by the hour, investing in doing things faster is not a good answer because you charge less. But if you can invest by the outcome, investment in efficiency makes sense. So there are opportunities in changing the way you deliver your service and the way you contract it. Another example is another customer I've got who works in the custom build. Everything is a one-off. The problem with everything being a one-off is it's high risk. If things go wrong, fairly soon, you're gonna run a risk of losing margin in the process. But how can I take that custom build and turn it into standard components? Then I reduce my risk and I can increase my margin, but still deliver what the customer is asking for, which is a customized service. So thinking of ways to take risk out of what you're doing and increase margin is about standardizing things within the mix of the way you do stuff to be able to improve the overall profitability of the service. A third area of opportunity is personalization. Toyota and Ford did a really good job of this a while back when they realized that people were struggling when they were buying cars, that the competitive market was getting harder and harder. So they got to the stage of saying, if you want to buy a new car, you come along to our offices and you sit down and we will choose with you the color you want the car, the color trim, all these, you can just select all the different options and we'll build that car for you in a time frame that you're happy with. So they turned what was a big mass production factory into effectively a personalized one-by-one manufacturing process, but kept the efficiency. So how could you take your commodity service and make it a personalized service, effectively making the customer feel special, giving them a unique relationship with you as you do it, and therefore enabling you to add value and charge more and get a better margin for it. So it's thinking about these big picture trends and always looking to deliver more value to the customer with less effort from your team. What are the ways we can achieve that? Are there ways we can contract differently? Are there ways we can deliver the service differently, reduce risk, reduce cost, but give a better outcome to the customer? So that's kind of opportunity space. I hope that's helpful. Because for me, working with clients, it's actually finding opportunities for them to change is often the biggest challenge. A lot of people look at their business and say, I don't know why I'm different from everybody else. We all do the same thing in my industry. We always have done, How do I separate my service from other people? And I think these hopefully are ideas that I found useful in helping people to think through that question. Now, at this stage of your planning process, the last thing you want to do is spend hours and hours and hours thinking about these things. What you want to do is capture the ideas and put them in the SWOT chart and write them down and say, well, I might be able to do this, or I might be able to go into that industry. Maybe I should look at this. They're ideas. And later on, we turn those ideas into reality by working out how to research that and investigate it properly and then work it out. We want to get through this process quickly. You don't want to spend weeks over it. So capture the ideas and write them down at this stage. So that gives us a bit of a summary. Yeah, we've got strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. And what are we going to do with that? Well, we're going to build on our strengths. We can work on our weaknesses fairly easily. We can recognize the big picture of opportunities and capture things we're going to work on. And most of the threats, we can do something to address in some form or other, whether it's through insurance or it's taking necessary steps or looking beyond our current industry or whatever. And all of these become actions that you're going to capture later on and put into what I call the master task log, which is a way of actually making change happen. If you don't put a plan together, nothing changes. So we're not looking at this as being the future, this is the present. And then we can plan how to move forward from that fairly easily. Okay, everybody still with me? Hopefully, yeah, seeing some nods, that's a good sign, thank you. So where do we go? Where do we go from here? How do you re-envisage the dream? And so some people, this is really easy. For some people, it's really hard. For most of us, the dream is not just about making money, There's a problem we'd love to solve for people, a group of people we'd like to help, or some product or service we passionately believe could be delivered better than it's now. How did you start in business? What was it like for you? Maybe it was, I could make more money, or I could do this better than my boss. A lot of tradespeople get into business that way. But for most of us, there's something else about it. I want a better lifestyle. I like the flexibility of being my own boss. Or maybe I'm passionate about helping these people, or no one else was doing it, so why can't I? There are lots of reasons behind it. in most cases, those reasons are not a goal. They're not a destination. They're a motivation to get started, but they're not where you're going to end up. So I think it's really important when we look at re-envisaging the dream to start asking the question of, what does success look like for me and my family? You know, what did I hope would happen originally? What was the dream that inspired me? Those are really important questions. And I think there are two parts to that. And when we do this kind of vision analysis with people, we normally look at there's two sides of the coin. The first side of the coin is personal vision. What does success look like for me and my family? What are our goals in 5 years' time? And I pick 5 years because it's not just around the corner, and it's believable that I could change lots in 5 years. And one of the favorite sayings is that, you know, most people overestimate what they can change in the short term and underestimate what they could change in the long term. If you allowed 5 years is long enough to get 2 degrees. You know, 5 years is long enough to change almost everything about your life if you wanted to. So it's kind of a nice enough distance. It's far enough out to start saying, yes, I could imagine life looking like that. I can believe in that being a goal, but it's not so close that you panic about the fact that it's impossible. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. Maybe 3 years is better for you, whatever. But start picturing, what does that life look like? What are the kind of things I'm interested in that life being? You know, where would I live in 5 years' time, ideally? How much time would I spend at work or at home? What's my work-life balance look like? Who would I spend time with? And if I can imagine life there, how much income would I need to be able to relax and enjoy that? What does that look like for me? And it's really worthwhile putting it down. I had a friend back up in Auckland. He ran a very successful business and some other interesting ventures. And he had a vision board in his office when he was starting out. His office was a dingy little room in the back streets of Auckland. And on that board, there was underneath the stairwell it was, it had a picture of a beach on Rarotonga, a Harley Davidson, a Ferrari, and a beautiful sort of restored villa in the countryside. You know, and that was he and his wife. And the wife was the beach and the villa, and his was the Harley Davidson, the Ferrari, in case you didn't guess. And that was their, this is why we're doing it kind of picture. This is where we want to get to. I don't know. I don't know whether he ever got there or not. I've lost touch with him in the years since. But when he had a bad day, he would turn around and look at the board and say, so I'll suck it up because of that. You know, and vision boards are a great way of trying to put a picture to the words that's believable of why you're actually going through it. Because at the end of the day, we're going to have to work pretty hard to get there. One of the things that's worth looking at when you're thinking about this is Simon Sinek's question, which is, what is your why? I don't know if anyone's read his books. He's a really good, writes a really good book. One's called The Power of Why, and then the second book was How to Find Your Why. I've listened to them both as audiobooks. It's actually neat because his process is very simple. It's a really simple analysis process to work out what motivates you. And it's really coming back to what makes you tick. Here's a process to how do you find your why? Well, you look at life stories. You talk about the favorite stories in your life. And as you look behind them and start breaking them down, you look at what motivated you in those particular events. My wife and I did this 4 years ago. I was selling the business in Auckland, and she had finished work, and the kids were leaving home. And we said, so we could do anything, you know. What do we care about? What are we passionate about? And for us, we were passionate about families and helping families to survive and to succeed and to grow. And we love hospitality. So we said, we're going to buy some land because we see how valuable animals can be in helping in that kind of therapy process and relationships. And we'll put some animals on it and we'll build some accommodation. And we won't do it in Auckland. We can't do that. We're going to do that in Nelson. And that's why we're here. The why for us was to see families succeed. The why for what I do this is my job is to innovate and help businesses to come up with innovative ideas in order that they can enjoy both a successful business and a successful family life. Knowing why you do it is a really important part of knowing who you are and how you're going to succeed and what success looks like for you as a family. So that's the personal vision. What about business vision? For those of us who've been struggling financially and enjoying the wage subsidy and possibly the mortgage relief, you know, COVID-19 is not the end of your dream. If you look at most millionaires, they've all been bankrupt at least once. In fact, Thomas Edison, in the invention of the light bulb, said, I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work. And he went on to say, many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. And I hear that, you know, I've been there numerous times actually, where you just think this is never going to work. I really should just stop and go and get a real job. But to be honest, if you haven't got a business vision, if you don't know where you're going, it's really hard to keep going when things like that happen. So we talked about a vision board for the family. I would do the same thing for the business, you know. And it's important to remember that the business is here to serve you, not the other way around. The number of people I meet who lose their families because the business takes over. You know, oh, I can't come home tonight, dear, fatigued because I just got to do this. And then it's 14 hours and 7 days a week, and the business becomes their life, and the family just slowly fades into the background. And one day you wake up and they're not there anymore. That's just so sad. It doesn't have to be that way. We have to remember that the business is here to serve us and not the other way around. Now, how do you define a business vision? So here's a little, you'll get these slides after us, by the way, and my little notes. But if you're looking at a business vision, I think it's worth addressing all of these things. And again, we're looking 5 years out. So goals are financial goals. That's kind of probably the easy bit. But target market, think about the customers you'd like to serve. They may not be the customers you serve now, but who are the customers you'd really like to be helping? What do they look like? What quality do you want to deliver to them? How big is your scale of operation? Is it just you on your own? Do you have 10 staff? Do you have branches all over the country? Are you franchising the business? You know, what's the scale of operation you want? How about customer service? How do you want your customer service to be delivered? What do people remember when they leave your business? Points of difference is always hard. How are you going to separate yourself from the competition? And again, that's the process. We spend quite a bit of time helping people understand that. But think about it. Try and understand what is going to make your business different from everybody else's in 5 years' time. Not now. In 5 years' time, what's going to make your business different from other people's? And then the culture, which is a key thing. I think it's Peter Drucker said that culture kicks strategy for touch every day. If you've got a really good culture, you can achieve fantastic things. If you've got a great strategy and a bad culture, you're going to really struggle. Culture is absolutely key. And then training, how are you going to upskill people and yourself to be able to get there? This is kind of a simple picture of what a vision should include for your business, a picture of where you're going as a business. It takes time to develop it. Again, focus at high level, brainstorm it, do it quickly, because what you're really trying to do is capture the details of where you're going, the big picture of where you're going, and then later on, we're going to put some actions together to work out how you're going to get there. Now, there are some people here who might be just starting out, and if you're just starting out a business and looking for a dream, saying, well, it's all very well for you to say that, but I haven't got a clue. I don't have a dream right now. I remember I'm the dreamer in our family, and about 20 odd years ago, my wife said to me, well, I don't have a dream. It's not fair. You have all these crazy dreams, which I do. And usually they're bad. But she's very good at putting me in my place. And I said, well, okay, let's have a look at that. And a really good friend of ours, a really wise guy, said to me once, if you want to know the dream that you should have, if you want to know, he would use words like purpose or calling or destiny. He said, there are 2 questions you need to ask. The first question is, who is in your heart? Who do you care enough? This is my words now. Who do you care enough about to work ridiculous hours for minimum wage just to help them solve their problem? Now, if you work in the rest home sector, you're very familiar with this. But, in any industry, if you're prepared to put lots of hours in and not get great returns to help people, then those are people you really care about. And it might be kids. It might be wealthy people who just need a break and no one really can relate to them. It might be other businesses in a particular sector that kind of gets to you and you really care about them. If you can identify those people, that's a long way to helping you identify what it is you should be doing. And the second question you said is, what is in your hand? What is it you're really good at doing? What skills do you have? What do you really enjoy doing? What kind of inside knowledge or abilities do you have? And who do you know? Who are the relationships you know that help you to put boundaries around that and service that, okay? So, yeah, thanks, Sergey, yep. Sadly, that shouldn't be true. I don't believe that is what all business should be. If you're reading the chat line, Sergey just said, isn't that what most small business owners already do? Sometimes for less than the minimum wage. And it's sadly true, yeah. I don't believe it should be, but it is sadly true. But these are great questions to ask. If you really want to refocus, who is in your heart? What is in your hand? They're great questions to start thinking about. I think Zig Ziglar had 4 questions. Who are you really passionate about? What do other people trust you to do? What do you get most satisfaction out of doing? And I can't remember what the 4th one was. So very similar kind of questions. Okay. But it's important to know why we're doing all this and where we're going. Okay, so we've talked about where are we now? We've talked about where we're going. How do you get there? The key thing in making change happen is actually incredibly simple. Change happens by lots of little steps made over time. And the only way that's going to work is if you have a plan. So my background as a project manager, I would draw a little diagram like this, which is work breakdown structure, we call it, in the IT space or in any big project. So you have columns, which are major kind of columns, and inside that, specific things. So maybe I know that I need to improve my marketing. So I have a marketing column. And under marketing, I know that these are the projects I'm going to take in that at some point in time. They're not in order, they're not prioritized. It's just a quick place I'm going to do a review of my website. I'm going to refresh the brand. I'm going to launch a particular campaign. I need to improve my systems. Well, I need to get some training. You see what I mean? It's a simple breakdown of all the projects you need to look at. And believe me, when you do this, it will be too big. You will probably have upwards of 30 projects on that list. And that's impossible to do. You look at it and think, goodness me, I'm never going to get there. But that's okay. The first thing is to get the list, to make the list as big as possible and as complete as possible. Yeah. So you're going to review the SWOT analysis for actions to address the weaknesses and address the threats. You're going to look at those opportunities and put some things in here around research to see which opportunities are worth developing. And the kind of questions I'd be asking in the process of going from here, where I am to where I want to go to, are things like, what do I need to stop doing that isn't working for me? What are the things I need to start doing more of? And what new actions do we need to take? What people, who do we need to talk to? What relationships do we need to build? And that'll give you a fairly big list of activity to work in. Yeah. Hopefully, that won't be too many things to do that's totally daunting. So the first thing is to get the list, and the second thing is to prioritize them. Yeah. How do you prioritize them? Well, I look at three different questions. The first thing is what's going to give me the best return? Right now, especially bearing in mind the current climate, I want to do something that's going to give me the best return for my investment of time and effort and potentially money in that. So reward. The second thing is importance. What's going to give the most significant change that's going to get me closest to my goal? What are the most important priorities to change? And the third thing is, what can I do? It's really important to start with projects you can succeed at, because success breeds success. If you start with the really difficult one and you fail, it's pretty easy to flag the whole lot. So make sure that if you pick 1, 2, or maybe 3 projects, I wouldn't normally do more than 3 at once. Pick things that you know you're going to succeed at, and they're going to make a difference, and they're worth doing. And then put the rest on the wall on a nice big sheet maybe, but put them out of your mind. 3 things you're going to work on. And then for each of those 3 things, what we need to do is break them down into a series of tasks, steps that need to be done. Allocate responsibilities. If there's more than you in the team, if you've got other people, helpfully get as many people in the team involved, because the more the team are involved, the more motivated they'll be, the more they're going to believe in the future for the business. And then you can start tracking progress. I say Sergey made a comment, how do you keep track of projects and to-do items? And that's a really good question. We all have our favorite sort of tools. For me, the most important thing is, first of all, to have a simple list of tasks. You can do it in a spreadsheet. I've experimented with a range of tools, to be honest. I quite like Teamwork. If you're working with other people, teamwork.com is quite a good project management team for teams to collaborate together. There's another one called Asana. If you're at all on Facebook or LinkedIn, you'll have seen lots of adverts from monday.com, which is quite a clever product. And these are all products. They tend to all use the same kind of metaphor for projects. They put vertical columns for the project and a whole list of tasks underneath it. Yeah. I use Microsoft Teams myself, which has a planner built into it. And if you're on Office 365 for Business subscriber, you get Microsoft Teams as part of your plan. But I guess the key thing really is to track progress. If you have a way of tracking progress and reporting on progress, then managing the list becomes fairly straightforward. And so how do you track progress? And I think this is probably almost more important than how you track progress, is how do you manage progress. And it seems to me, in my own personal experience, I'm not the most disciplined person, to be honest. But also in the businesses I've worked in the past, the most important thing is to have someone else you're accountable to. A key value that we add to our customers is the fact we sit down with them every fortnight and say, so we said we were going to do these things. How are you getting on? What's the problems? What are the roadblocks? How do we move forward? I would pick anyone. If you've got a partner who's not involved in the business, sit down with them and say, every fortnight, on a Monday at 7 o'clock, I want to sit down with a glass of wine and I'm going to tell you how I'm getting on changing my business. Is that okay? And you need to hold me to account to this. Yeah. And then write a simple status report. It's a one-pager. It lists what you're trying to achieve, the key tasks you're trying to work on, and then you can put down what progress have you made, what are the issues, and what are your next steps. Simple, easy to do, preferably in one page per project. And then you can have that conversation. And to be honest, the most valuable part of that conversation is preparing for it, filling in the status report. I know people don't like admin, but actually writing a status report is a really powerful way of making you think about, how am I getting on? Am I making progress? Are things working properly? Yeah. Status. So, and you know, if you haven't got a partner or you don't want to use that, a business mentor with the New Zealand Business Mentors is one option. It's something that we charge people squillions of dollars for. So I'm really happy to charge you, a lot if you're interested. But you really need somebody, and they're going to be consistent. They're going to ring you up. They're going to have an appointment in your diary. They're going to turn up and say, so how's it going? And the second thought, and this is equally important, is you need to track whether it's making a difference. What's happening? And here the difficulty is identifying what the key metrics are for your business. It's not just profit. It's not just revenue. It might be, well, we put lots of quotes out and we don't get many orders. So we need to track sales conversions. What percentage of our quotes become orders? Right now, it's only 10%. It needs to be 30%. Yeah. There are key metrics in every business. What are the metrics that make a difference for you? List them. Hopefully keep it to about 3 or 4. Put targets against them and then track your progress. And it doesn't matter whether it's a paper-based system or a computer-based system. Just have a quick way so that in that report, in that meeting with that other person, you can sit down and look at those targets and keep track against your progress against them. Gosh, I've taken a long time, haven't I? 57 minutes. So wrapping it up, quick summary. This is one of my all-time favorite quotes. Came from a book called Good to Great by a guy called Jim Collins, 2017. There's a link to his website on the bottom of here where he talks about the whole interview. And Jim interviewed a guy called Admiral Jim I always get his name wrong, Stockdale, Admiral Jim Stockdale. He was the most senior Vietnamese prisoner of war in the Vietnam War. He was in prison for several years, and lots of people in the same prisons died. And because he was senior, he got the special treatment, even worse than everyone else. And Jim basically said, how on earth did you survive? What was it that kept you going? Was it optimism? Was it hope? What were the key things that made you go? And this is what he said. This is what I learned from those years in the prison camp, where all those constraints just were oppressive. You must never, ever, ever confuse, on the one hand, the need for absolute, unwavering faith that you can prevail despite those constraints, with, on the other hand, the need for the discipline to begin by confronting the brutal facts, whatever they are. We're not getting out of here by Christmas. And that last little quote, we're not getting out of here by Christmas, was a comment that was about the guys who died were the people who said, we'll be out by Christmas. And Christmas came and went, and they weren't out. And so they said, oh, we'll be out by Easter. And they basically died of a broken heart. And lots of business owners do. She'll be right. We'll get there one day. It's a bad year. It's a bad month. Let's not look at it. Let's just hope for the best. And that just isn't going to get you there. You've got to confront the brutal facts of where you are today. What's working, what's not working. And then you have to have an absolute faith in yourself and the vision, the dream that you're trying to build, and that it's achievable. And if you've got those two things, the task becomes simple. Build a plan to go from A to B. And if you need some help, give me a call. I shouldn't put that in there, should I? So you need a plan to get there. I think that's my last slide. So thank you very much for listening. If you've got any questions, love to answer or to talk about it. Sarah, back to you.
Thank you, Richard. Can you all hear me? Yeah?
Yep.
You can. Cool. Really interesting talk with some great material there for us to think about carefully. I guess some of your comments are talking about mentoring or having someone else to help you in the process. It's really hard when we're all busy with the day-to-day, isn't it, to be able to see the business objectively from an outsider's view, and especially from a customer's viewpoint. It's really important to see that side. So have you got any suggestions about how to gauge a customer's response, and for how you're doing now, or how what needs to be improved?
It's actually quite hard because most of us don't ask our customers.
Yeah.
So we have a perception, we can have anecdotal stories about what we think customers really value about us, but it's not always what the customer thinks. And so there's a couple of tools I use quite often. We do customer surveys. Mm-hmm. So we look at the customer list, we take the top 10 customers that we really value, and we ring them up. We have a set of questions. We say, look, we're looking to improve our service. We want to grow the business. Could you just answer a few questions for me? Mm-hmm. When I was in Auckland, we actually went a step further. We went to our top 10 questions, and we took croissants, because the lady I was with was French. And we said, we'd like a meeting with you. Give us half an hour of your time. We'll bring the coffee and the croissants, and we'll sit down in your office. And we want to talk to you about, where are we stuffing up? What could we do better? How did that project go? What could we do more to help you? It was the worst thing I've ever done. I came back completely floored. These guys, they slated us for things that I thought we were doing fantastically in. Yeah. And then they said, oh, this was really, really important to us. And they were things that I thought were completely irrelevant. And, it was just painful. It was really painful. But, it's worth doing, because if you can't face that pain, you really can't change. And I was amazed at the things that they, held us responsible for, when it wasn't what we weren't actually responsible for those things. And I thought, wow, our communication needs to improve. And the things they valued, and it surprised me how easy it was to adjust our process to get a lot more ticks in the boxes, basically.
So how can a small business owner, get that objective information without just going to the, in a safe way, that, not just using their friends, but actually getting that critical, helpful advice without, that might be helpful to them, rather than just asking their friends and getting that sort of positive reinforcement that might not be so helpful?
Like I say, talk to your customers directly, as opposed to friends. I think that works. The only other way of doing it is depends on the scale. If you're a bigger business, you can do market research. You can actually pay someone else to do it for you. For small businesses, ask your staff. They'll often have a gut feel about what's not really working. They'll be able to say, well, actually, I keep getting complaints like this. No one listens to me. I say this is a problem, but no one seems to hear it. Actually, hearing the conversations going on internally is worth it. There's nothing beats talking to customers, though.
Yeah. Has anyone else got any burning questions? I think you can unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Comment. Would you like to, Laurie, can you try and unmute yourself and make sure that system works? Yeah.
Works.
Yeah. So
unmuted.
Anyone wants to ask a question, they can unmute themselves and ask Richard. Hi, Melanie. See some familiar faces there. That's awesome. Hello, Ian. And Colleen. Yeah. Cool. Well,
I like the fact that BMNZ, the Business Mentors New Zealand, through NTBT, has been able to provide additional mentoring during the lockdown. That's where I was able to get assigned a mentor, and that has been absolutely brilliant. It pays, well, they ended up doing it for free services with the calls that you were offering and the opportunities, but it pays to do a little bit of research and to ask for help. If you don't ask, you won't get.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good advice. Yeah. And the cost of applying for a mentor is not a huge amount, is it? Over that 12-month period.
Very reasonable.
Oh yeah, well worth it. And we have a lot of mentors available at the moment because unfortunately they're not able to go overseas, which some of them do during the winter. So, we have got them available if anybody is interested in talking to us about contacting a mentor.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good to see some familiar faces and some new ones as well. Thank you so much, Richard. You have given us a lot to think about, and we really appreciate your time. Richard is a business mentor, so he does give a lot of his time for free, and is obviously involved in the business. And I'm sorry I didn't do the introduction at the beginning. Success Partners.
Yeah.
And I think we can all see just how valuable that sort of more structured approach and that objective approach is as well, because it comes down a lot of the time to focus and accountability. We all do the things we love doing and are very good at avoiding the ones that we're not so keen on. So having someone on your team to coach you is really helpful. So thank you, Richard. I really appreciate that. We will contact everybody with the handout and the recording as well. So awesome. This technology is amazing, isn't it? I'm really